And we welcome you to episode number 60 of the Seleção podcast, a proud partner of Portugal.net. My name is Danny Pinto. I am your host. Thank you guys so much for tuning in once again. We've had a series of episodes these last 2 weeks or so, leading up to the playoff in what we were hoping would be a finally getting to the World Cup. And the job was done. So easy, of course, just the way Portugal always does it. But we are so thankful that our beloved Seleção has made the World Cup. The World Cup draw has happened. And now we will talk about our three opponents in Qatar, however you guys are saying it too, with our good friend here, Tom Kundert of Portugal.net. And Tom, an eventful, I would say, last 10 days or almost 2 weeks here in the land of Seleção football. But job done, although it took a little longer than we probably were hoping for back in November. But our Seleção is going to the World Cup. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great, Danny. Great to speak to you about our Seleção, and thank God that we're speaking about Portugal at the World Cup, isn't it? And not having a bit of a post-mortem about what went wrong. So, yeah, an amazing week, really. Such things about these playoffs, of course, we all would rather do without this extra stress, but it's certainly made for a really exciting week. Two great matches. I think Portugal, maybe not great matches, but that's like you just said it there. They got the job done, which was the most important thing. And yeah, we'll be in Qatar. So really looking forward to it after yesterday's draw. Really, it would have been such a shame to watch the World Cup. I wouldn't have even been that interested in watching it, to be honest, if Portugal weren't there. So just all's well that ends well, as they say.
Yeah, after these two matches, and all the criticisms of Fernand Santos and all these, I'm seeing people, with some of the lineups that either were called, and we'll look at the playoffs kind of general view here in just a moment. But there's a lot of pessimism with this team heading into the playoffs, and I can understand it because one, a lot of us, I think both of us feel that on paper this team shouldn't have been put in a position to be in the playoff. They have the talent to win the group that they were in for qualifying for the World Cup, and frustrations obviously with Fernand Santos still being the manager, but I was so thankful watching the draw yesterday that once Group H had Portugal in it, it was like, okay, we're in it. It's almost like we knew we were gonna be, but there was almost an exhale of all this drama, all this all this pessimism. For now, at least, can subside because Portugal is in the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what got Portuguese fans down really was you're right. You look at the qualifying group, and Portugal should have won that group. But then we have to remember, other teams also have their arguments, and Serbia are a decent team. And I think that the thing which really made Portugal and Portuguese fans really kind of disappointed with just that last match against Serbia. I was listening to your episode with Nathan, and he said that's just about the worst match he can ever remember the Seleção playing. And I think I have to agree, in terms of attitude, especially, got the early goal and just sat back, and we kind of, just basically all the worst traits of Portugal in recent months came out in that game. So yeah, that looked bad. And then of course, when the draw was made for the playoffs, and we got Italy in our, on our path, supposedly, that just kind of compounded the anger and the depression, and thought, Portugal, with all these great players, look like they're just not going anywhere. So yeah, it was a huge relief to make it through. I suppose 1 out of 4 teams And when one of the other possible opponents is Italy, you kind of fear the worst, don't you? But they did a good job, and I think there was also some signs. It's interesting hearing some of the comments or reading some of the comments on the recent articles on Portugal, and I think someone made a good point that the fact that Fernando Santos was really forced into a bit of a rethink and trying a few new things. Diego Costa, of course, in goal, the obvious one. Even bringing in Otavio, who wasn't probably what most people would have expected to be starting. And he played really well both games. It could actually have been beneficial for Portugal. Going to the World Cup through this route. We've certainly got a few more options now, it seems.
Yeah, sometimes what's the adage? Necessity is the mother of invention. Sometimes it's just if Renat Sanch is available, maybe we don't see Otavio in the 11. Who knows what the reasoning was for Diogo Costa to finally get his start over Rui Patricio. In talking with Alex Gonçalves. In the episodes leading up to the playoff, we were both of the opinion that José Sá merited a call up to the team originally as part of the three keepers. If it was up to me personally, I would have probably dropped Anthony Lopes because you knew Rui Patricio was going to be called up because he's such a player that has been part of the fabric of this Seleção for so long, and I don't think he had fallen off so much that he wouldn't be part of the original selection. But we thought José Sá merited, obviously, because he's been one of the best keepers in the Premier League, and then Diogo Costa has been arguably the best keeper in the Portuguese league. So but to see Diogo Costa get the start was the surprise for me. But you're right, Tom. He may have been forced into some of these decisions. Fernando Santos was, but sometimes when you're forced into doing something and when your back is against the wall like his is, there sometimes is no choice but to do it. So.
Yeah, and I think we also have to praise him, Danny, when, we criticise him plenty over the last year or so, and I think a lot of the criticism is justified, but we also have to praise him when he gets things right, doesn't he? And he obviously saw, that seemed a huge call, didn't it? Diogo Costa, Portugal's most important game for years, bringing in an inexperienced goalkeeper in international terms, and really even in club football. This is only his first season that he's been an automatic starter for Porto, and but coming into such an important game with the whole kind of weight of the country, all eyes looking at you. It was all or nothing, wasn't it? But Santos had obviously, he'd seen him in training, he'd talked to him, he'd kind of gauged his kind of psychological fortitude, I suppose you could say. As well as obviously his footballing merit and his form, and he decided that he was ready, and certainly it proved to be the case, didn't he? I know he didn't have too much to do in these two games, but everything he did perfectly, and I think a lot of people have pointed out, and they're absolutely correct. I'm a huge fan of Rui Patricio. He's done great service for Portugal, but one thing you have to say, one weakness in his game is his distribution, and there's
absolutely
no doubt about it that that was a huge upgrade. Diogo Costa just seemed so calm with the ball at his feet, good passing, and it's just keeping possession, such an important part of the game in the modern game, wasn't it? Whereas with Patricio, I remember the game against Serbia especially, just basically every time the ball was at his feet, he ended up losing possession, either kicking it out or not finding the right pass. So yeah, fair play to Santos. Big call, and he got that one right for sure.
Yeah, and let's take a look at the two playoff games that got us to the World Cup here, Tom, and we could take a look at it in a more general view. But We had Mark Lewis of ESPN on our last pod, and he kind of eloquently said, looking at a 5-1 aggregate score over a 2-game playoff, you would think that Portugal just breezed through. But but then you say Portugal, and that's just never the case. What did you think of? You had said good results. Obviously, at the end of the day, the job and the mission was to get 2 victories, and that's exactly what Portugal did. But overall, your thoughts on how Portugal got to Qatar through the 2 playoff wins.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Mark. You look at the scoreline, it seems, pretty easy job, but it wasn't, was it? Against Turkey, especially. I remember, I think I just tweeted out at the start of the second half where Portugal actually started the first half and the second half really well in that game. And at the start of the second half, they were 2-0 up. They were really pushing for a third goal, weren't they, Danny? They looked completely in control. And I remember, I think I tweeted something. I don't know if I ended up tweeting it saying, what is this? This is the Seleção. It's just, it's so calm. We look like we're going to have an easy victory.
Yeah, they're wearing the shirts look familiar, but this is something I'm not familiar with. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And then, of course, Portugal reverted to type. Kind of lost control a little bit of the match. Turkey, got the goal back, and then the penalty, and suddenly Portugal were kind of on their heels again. And we thought, oh dear, and God only knows what would have happened if that penalty did go in. But fortunately,
I asked Nathan. Sorry to cut you off, Tom. I asked Nathan what his thoughts were right when that penalty was called. What were you feeling at that moment?
Oh yeah, just absolute dread because that they just were having all the momentum, weren't they? Turkey aren't a bad side, obviously.
No, not at all.
Although Portugal, you'd have to say player for player, Portugal are a superior side, but at that time, especially I think Portugal having really dominated the match and looking, like I was saying, looking like they were going to breeze through to the final, and then having just lost control of it, kind of inexplicably. And then even, for Turkey scored the goal and then they got the penalty. And you have to say it, during that 20-minute period, they looked the stronger team. So, like I said, it was really, that was my heart was just going wild a little bit when he stepped up to take that penalty. And thank God he skied it. And and then the final, again, same thing. You think 2-0, okay, easy victory. But although I think Portugal never really lost control of this match like they did against Turkey, first 10, 20 minutes or so, it's pretty even, and Portugal were really not creating anything at all. There was that one Ronaldo chance, wasn't there, which he dragged wide. But apart from that, you have to say North Macedonia looked quite comfortable, and of course we all know what they did to Italy in the semi-final. So it was a little bit more nervy then. But having said that, I think once Portugal got themselves in the lead, again that was, I'd say, quite uncharacteristically smooth from Portugal's point of view, or from the point of view of being a Seleção fan, because not so much that Portugal were, all over them and looking like they were going to score any minute, but just the fact that North Macedonia really didn't hold any threat at all. And so, you didn't really feel so nervous. At least I didn't really feel so nervous that, they'd get back into it. So, never, it's never easy being a Seleção fan, is it, Danny? But
no, not at all, Tom. Never is, my friend. Something I had talked about, and I'm trying to go back through all my notes here and mentally here, because we've done, we've been lucky to do, I should say, so many episodes in the last couple of weeks here. But when the draw for the playoff occurred. Tom, what are we drinking there, bud? As we're listening, if you're coffee, at noon.
Noon. There you go. Got to keep myself, right on the spot to respond to your questions.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. But when we saw the draw for the playoff, obviously the automatic was, okay, we're going to be playing Italy in the final, to get to the World Cup. One of these two giants are not going to make it. Obviously there was a possibility that both of them, depending on how the semifinals were going to go, we could have seen a scenario where Portugal and Italy wasn't going to make it. But um, being living in Portugal, when Italy loses and North Macedonia is the opponent, from the outside looking in terms of I mean, I'm a fan and I support the team, but obviously I live in the States. What was the feeling like in Portugal when North Macedonia was the opponent? Because I felt that there was probably even more pressure now on Portugal to get through. With no disrespect to North Macedonia, but they don't have the lineage and the prestige of an Italy, because on paper there's no shame in bowing out to Italy in a final. But did you feel that there was more pressure, you think, on Portugal to make it simply because of the opponent, or because it was a final, it was pressure nonetheless?
Yeah, more pressure without a doubt. Losing to North Macedonia would have been such an embarrassment and such a really disastrous end to Fernando Santos's Portugal career. But having said that, I think the feeling in Portugal was absolute relief. It's just okay. We've got more pressure now. We're playing North Macedonia. If we lose this, it would be terrible. But if given a choice of North Macedonia or Italy, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's quite funny. I remember going to. I didn't go to the semi-final, but I went to the final, and before I had a chat with James Horncastle, who is the Italy correspondent for The Athletic, really good sports journalist, and it follows everything to do with Italian football. And he was obviously at the semi-final, and I was saying, I've met him a few times before, so I was saying, "Oh, hi, James. Really nice to meet you. But I have to say, commiserations, but I am very happy that we're not playing Italy and we're playing North Macedonia." He had a good laugh about that, because, it's if Portugal played Italy, I think it's 50-50, who goes through. Portugal against Macedonia, North Macedonia, you're right. Increased pressure in the sense that we really cannot fail. But, 80% chances, I would say, or 20% chance of North Macedonia pulling out another shock. And so I think the feeling in Portugal was definitely more of relief than, increased pressure. It's funny, wasn't it, that the semi-final against Turkey, things seemed to be going quite smoothly. Then things started going a bit pear-shaped. And then I think there was kind of a 5-minute spell where just all Portuguese fans just got like a shot in the arm, which was the missed penalty, huge relief. The second Portugal goal, the third Portuguese goal. Okay, so that's all over. And then the news that North Macedonia had won. So we were all kind of 10 minutes earlier, we were all a nervous wreck. And suddenly we were just, kind of on cloud nine after, such a free shots of, I suppose, maximum volume bagasso had just been injected into our veins. And so, yeah, it was, it's quite a moment that. But yeah, North Macedonia, take them any day of the week, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and it's the roller coaster that this Seleção loves to take us on, free of charge, by the way. They don't charge any tickets, or they don't charge any money to take this emotional roller coaster to us every single time. We're talking with Tom Kundert here of Portugal.net as we take a review real quick of the playoff that got us to Qatar 2022. And if you're listening to us, we are recording this on Saturday, the day after the World Cup draw. And Tom, let's take a look at the World Cup draw, as Portugal, by way of Italy not making it and Portugal making it to the World Cup. Portugal became a seeded team, and they were drawn into Group H. And spoiler alert: if you've been watching us on YouTube, you've been able to see who we qualified or who was in our group. If you didn't know already. Uruguay, South Korea, and Ghana. The first thought that came to my mind, without really doing a little bit of research, is Portugal got into the World Cup. It was April 1st, and we didn't get into the group of death. But I would say, out of maybe all of the groups, Tom, this might be the most balanced from top to bottom.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, Danny. Yeah, it's not like you said. I agree with you. You know, Portugal. How many times have we seen them just get really tough draw? Even the playoff draw, isn't it? We were all hoping out of anything just avoid Italy. We got Italy. So yeah, and I agree with you. Yeah, quite a balanced group. I think I'd say I'd be quite happy with this draw. I think most of the Portuguese, the committee, Fernando Santos, the players, the fans, I think they'd be pretty pleased with this draw. But I agree with you; it's balanced. I certainly wouldn't call it an easy draw, without a
No,
doubt.
not at all.
No, but yeah, I think three. You can see there three quite close games, I'd say. But looking at it, trying not to be too kind of one-eyed from a Seleção fan point of view, you look at it, and I'd say that Portugal would probably be favourites, certainly in two of them, of course, against Ghana and South Korea, and Uruguay, even against Uruguay. I'd quite fancy our chances. So, yeah, you have to say quite a good draw. Won't be easy, but, looking at it, I suppose, from kind of the other way of looking at it, if Portugal don't make it out of that group, that will be a huge disappointment.
Yeah, I think well, maybe not the consensus, but I think what a lot of people are looking at this group is in terms of it being as balanced as any of the other groups could be, is because the way Portugal kind of is up and down. Even though the quality is there, obviously, if it was, if Portugal was going into this World Cup, easily qualifying through the group stage and dominating the way that we all hope that they can eventually figure out how to. This may be this may not be as balanced a group as many pundits are saying, because or are saying. I think the thing that is what's causing maybe people to say that this might be as balanced a group as there is in the draw is, let's say you have, Portugal being number one. You can make an argument for any of the other three teams to get out of the group. And in a sense, you could probably just make an argument for any of the four to get out, because it may not surprise you to see, Portugal and South Korea, or Uruguay and Ghana. So I think that's where I guess the balance narrative is coming, because there is a lot of uncertainty with all four of these teams. With let me look at my notes here. I believe, yeah, Ghana was the only team of the four to actually win their group to get through. But yeah, maybe there's just a bit of uncertainty as to who might get out, just because of the uncertainty of how they got to the World Cup in the first place.
Agree 100%, Danny. Yeah, that's well put. I think, yeah, any of these four countries, I think looking at this draw, I can imagine all of these four countries looking at it and probably having quite similar thoughts to us in Portugal, thinking, yeah, okay, we've got a chance here. It's not going to be easy, but we've got a chance against all these sides. I can't say, that's interesting what you just pointed out there about Ghana. I can't say I know an awful lot about these teams, to be perfectly honest, but I know, for instance, South Korea, I think they're on a really good run, and our old friend, of course, Paulo Bento, and I just read the other day, for instance, I think they won their group, didn't they? They beat Iran, and it was the first time they'd beaten Iran, I think, for 10 years or 12 years or something like that. So that kind of shows you that, they seem to be, they're always pretty strong, aren't they, South Korea, but they seem to be on a bit of a roll. So, yeah, that was certainly not be easy at all. And Ghana, like you just said, they won their group. African teams are always quite unpredictable, aren't they? And, they can be really good, and they can be a bit disorganized. But and then Uruguay, of course, like I tweeted out, it's quite funny. Portugal, I kind of consider the big overachievers in Europe in terms of their population, the players they produce, and even the performances they put in the big tournaments. And Uruguay is the same, isn't it? Uruguay in South America is, 3 million, I think, isn't it? It's a country of 3 million. Absolutely incredible when you think about what they've achieved in their football history. And, they keep churning out these these great players, as of course you will know, Danny. One of them is having a pretty good season at Benfica.
Yes, sir, Mr. Darwin.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's balanced group. I'd agree with you, Danny. I think that's the good way to kind of describe this group overall, quite balanced. But that said, if you told me before the draw this would be Portugal's group, I think I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. A quick rundown of our opponents here in late November and early December. Obviously, Portugal, we've made our sixth consecutive World Cup, eighth overall. Uruguay is ranked 13th in the world according to the latest FIFA rankings. They finished third in South American qualifying. Payback on the minds of Portuguese fans for sure, as the one and only. And you know what I like about this draw too, Tom, is I like that there's World Cup history between all three of the opponents with the Seleção. They're all one game, but I just like to see that. Just you could go back and go to 2002 with South Korea, or most recently in 2018 with Uruguay. A very forgettable 2014 against Ghana, but still, I like the history. That there's some history here, but we're going to try to get our payback from Uruguay from 2018. South Korea ranked 29th. Tom, I believe they finished second in their group in the Asian Football Confederation. I think they may have finished tied with Iran, and there was a tiebreaker there or something, or maybe I think it was Ghana that maybe had a tiebreaker with South Africa, something like that. But anyway, obviously and you bring up Paul Bent because Paul Bent is actually tied to two of the three opponents here. In South Korea, we had that famous 1-0 loss in the last match of the 2002 World Cup in group play, where a draw would have gotten Portugal and South Korea through to the knockouts. And there was rumblings of perhaps players talking with South Korean players and say, hey guys, if we get a draw, we're both in. So let's turn it down to maybe a 6 or a 7, maybe. Let's not go full 9-10 on this game. And then, of course, the Portuguese punch heard around the world with João Pinto, who, ironically enough, is on this Portuguese staff. So currently with the Fernandes, we lose 1-0. We bow out of the 2002 World Cup. And then I mentioned Paul Bent. Not only is Paul Bent tied to two of the matches, he was in the starting 11 of that South Korea game. And he is was also the manager in Portugal's lone win in 2014, which was a victory against Ghana, the one and only time that Portugal played Ghana in the World Cup back in 2014. So Paul Bent has his fingerprints all over the place on this group, that's for sure. But I would just call it, in terms of historical, for lack of a better term, I just like that there's some history here, Tom, with all three of these matches.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite recent history, isn't it, as well, if you think about it? All in the 2000s, isn't it? All of these matches. It's funny, I was just thinking, Danny, as you were talking there, every time we've played these countries in a World Cup match, it's been Portugal's last match in a tournament. So I hope that's not a...
yeah, that's true. I was I was doing some good, loss, win.
It was I hope that's not a, that's a bad omen. But yeah, I've heard some people...
You hear that, South Korea? Not again.
yeah, exactly. Hopefully, and I think, that it would just kind of serve as notice, as warning for Portugal that I'm sure they know anyway. You can't possibly even think about taking these matches easily because, three tough opponents. They're going to be three tough opponents without doubt. And two of them got the better of us in recent tournaments. And that game against South Korea in 2002, that's one of the all-time classics. We were just talking before we started recording. I suppose you call these classic matches they're classic matches even if Portugal don't win them, but I'd say classic matches that Portugal have been involved in, and that is certainly one of them. Incredible. Of course, like you said, you just described the scenario. Portugal just needed a draw to get through the group. And it was, of course, kind of at the height of the golden generation, huge expectations for Portugal going into that tournament. Supposedly an easy group. Who were the other teams? USA and Poland.
USA and Poland, yeah.
USA
and it was
Poland.
and it was probably, well, it ended up being the one and only like real tournament that golden generation, or that World Cup tournament that golden generation ever really participated in, because it was the first qualification since '86.
Exactly, and they were all at their heights. Really, you could argue 2004, the next tournament. It was Figo and Rui Costa were still around, but they were perhaps slightly at the tail end of their career. At 2002, Figo, Rui Costa, Sergio Conceição, Fernando Couto, they're all there. Vitor Bahia. It was the golden generation at the height of their maturity. So, everyone expecting Portugal to really do something then. And the game itself, wow, it was 2 red cards for Portugal, João Pinto and the famous punch, and also Beto, the Sporting defender, he got sent off. So
that's right.
Ended up playing with 9 men. South Korea scored, and amazingly, Portugal were just, obviously they were absolutely desperate, just poured forward, and they very nearly, got the equaliser. I remember Sergio Conceição, I think he hit the post late on, and a couple of good saves. Nuno Gomes had a couple of, attempts, just amazing. Just everything went wrong for Portugal in that tournament, of course. And so I've heard a few people talking about payback and revenge. Don't really kind of agree with that talk, because different generation, different times. Sure. But yeah, it's I think hopefully Portugal should use those history and use precedent to just make them realize that they have to be at the very top of their game to make sure they get the right result.
We're talking with Tom Kundert here of Portugal.net. We're on episode number 60 of the Seleção podcast. We are taking a look at the World Cup draw for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. I go back and forth on Qatar and Qatar. I probably will do it between now and the end of December. But Tom, what do you prefer? Is it Qatar or Qatar? What do you say?
Yeah, well, I think that must be the US pronunciation, because we tend to say here Qatar. I think
see, I say Qatar too, but for whatever reason, I think I heard Qatar about a million times yesterday during the World Cup draw, and I think it's now in the subconscious that I'm saying it that way. But whatever we know, as long as we're talking about Portugal going to Qatar or Qatar, that's all. That's the positive part of all this is figuring out the pronunciation of a country where Portugal is going to be headed here in about 8-9 months time here. But the one or another positive based on the draw was not only perhaps not getting drawn in with another big country. There's some groups here. I think like France and Denmark, I believe Germany and Spain are in a group. So on the surface, it was a very favorable draw in terms of opponents. Perhaps the one positive that I think is a definite positive is being drawn in Group H, because in terms of time, I believe FIFA is requiring all players that are going to be participating in the World Cup to report to the World Cup a week before the first match begins. And being in Group H, you're going to get at least 2 to 3 extra days, whether Fernando Santos uses those as rest days or extra training days. And whether you've got new legs or old legs, and we're talking about, Ronaldo and Pep and João Moutinho, these guys are obviously going to be all coming from their clubs in the middle of their season. So getting, maybe an extra day or two of rest has got to be one of the overall positives for this national team as they head to the World Cup in late November.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because, like you said there, I think more so in this World Cup than any other, because it's, of course, very unusual in that it's in mid-season. So these players will be kind of playing, and they'll just be, they'll have to break off from their club football, go straight into the tournament. And so, yeah, not like the usual build up to these tournaments where you have, 2-3 weeks maybe of a training camp, getting together, And so in that case, everyone's, it probably doesn't make much difference 2 or 3 days here or there. But yeah, I agree with you absolutely. Because it's mid-season, they'd all be, stopping their club commitments, going to Qatar, not having an awful lot of time to prepare, to train. And we all know that's one thing which international managers, international coaches, they always complain about, the difference between international football and club football is that you just basically don't get enough time with the players to try and implement your systems, try and get, everyone on the same page in terms of how you're going to play. So yeah, an extra 2 or 3 days could really be quite advantageous for Portugal. Hopefully so.
Yeah, and obviously it would be the same for the other 3 groups or other 3 teams in the group. But obviously we're looking at this from a Portuguese point of view. If we dare to look a bit ahead to perhaps a round of 16 matchup, we get Group G, which consists of where are my notes here? Brazil, Cameroon, Switzerland, and our good friends Serbia. I believe it would behoove both of the Portuguese-speaking countries in those groups to finish first, so that they will potentially avoid each other in a round of 16 matchup. But just looking at potential matchups there, Tom, what do you see? And I don't know if I would be too upset if we got another shot at Serbia, but I just on a personal level, I'm a really nice guy, Tom, but I'm a pretty vengeful person if I need to be. I want to get back at Uruguay, I want to get back at South Korea, I want to get back at Serbia. But what do you think of the Group G and the potential matchups there in the round of 16 if Portugal are fortunate enough to get out?
Yeah, it would be. I think it's quite difficult to call. Again, Group G, I'd say obviously Brazil will be favourites there. Always one of the favourites to win the whole thing, and you would have thought that they would win that group. But then the other 3, I'd say it's quite similar to Portugal's group, and I think that's actually quite a strong group. Also, we have to the fact that it's quite a strong group. I suppose, wouldn't it just be typical, Dan, if Portugal managed to win their group and say, yeah, we've avoided Brazil, and then Brazil comes second, which could happen. But if you look at that kind of logically, or I suppose, sometimes logic goes out the window in football, doesn't it? But you would expect Brazil to win that group. Out of the 3, though, I'd say it's really, I can't say that Serbia are definitely better than the other 2 sides. Cameroon or Switzerland. I think Switzerland proved in the last Euros they knocked out France, didn't they, in that amazing game?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and of course we've got history against them quite recently. I think the first game after we won 2016, became European champions. Perhaps psychologically we were all still on cloud 9 a little bit, because first qualifying game for the next World Cup went to Switzerland, got beaten 2-0. Fortunately, in the very last game of that qualifying campaign, we managed to get the same result against them here in Lisbon. So, we ended up winning that qualifying group, didn't we? But, Serbia, I don't know. I think I'd prefer to avoid Serbia if possible. Just the psychological advantage I think they'd have, of knowing they'd kind of knocked us out once already.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, they may be able to knock us out again. Or imagine if Portugal played against them. Of course, it would be most of the same players, and Serbia got into the lead or something. Portugal players might even subconsciously start thinking, "Oh, here we go again." So, but that's kind of a more negative approach. A more positive approach, like you said. Yeah, okay, yeah, we remember.
Yeah, Tom, but remember, we're Tom, we're Portuguese.
Yeah.
Positive approaches are not really our forte. We live in the negative for the most part. So it's just it's just a natural feeling.
Yeah, but you think if you even taken that into account, the recent history against Serbia, if Brazil win their group, if Portugal win their group, you'd have to say things would be looking quite good for Portugal, I think, because you'd have to be quite confident of winning the round of 16 games. For instance, imagine if we were paired up against, like you said, the group with France and Denmark. Either of those sides would have, I think, been quite tough. Of course, imagine if we were paired up with a group with Spain and Germany. I feel quite sorry for. I think I'm just having a look at the draw in front of me. It's Belgium's group. So Belgium will presumably win that. They've got Canada, Morocco, and Croatia. So if they win their group, then they know in the round of 16, they're almost certainly going to play Spain or Germany. That's a pretty tough task, isn't it? So early in the
congratulations,
tournament.
you've won the group. Here's Spain or Germany for you.
Exactly. So I don't think, again, I think that's another aspect of the draw that I think didn't turn out too badly for Portugal. Of course, we, like all draws, we only will know the answer, won't we, after the games are played. But in theory, it hasn't worked out too badly. And if the worst came to the worst, or perhaps it will turn out being the best, and we did play Brazil, this early in the tournament, again, I wouldn't say that's a foregone conclusion. Brazil, in that case, Brazil will have a whole lot of pressure because Brazil always are under pressure to win the whole thing. But I think at this moment in time, I'd say looking at the squads player for player, I think it's probably one of the few times in history where you could say that Portugal are at least as strong as Brazil. You could even argue stronger than Brazil in terms of some of the individual players. I think if we went right through history, had a look at put Portugal's squad next to Brazil's squad or team 11, put them next to each other. He said how many Portuguese players would get into the Brazil team. You'd probably be talking 1, 2, 3 at maximum throughout history. Whereas if you did that today, I don't know, but I'd expect, probably about half the team. It would probably be about half and half. So yeah, it's just so exciting, isn't it, Danny? All the possibilities, and let's see what happens.
Yep, exciting to talk about the Seleção in the World Cup. That is for sure. Tom, and you shared this. You shared a video or an interview you did with CNN. I believe the day or the night of qualification. And one of the things, and if you guys haven't seen it, Tom's tweeted it on his Twitter account, and we've retweeted it as well, so you can find it on Tom's Twitter. But it's a very, just having the World Cup in the winter is just such an interesting I guess just a way of going into a tournament, because there will be no friendlies heading into this tournament. The quote unquote friendlies, the quote unquote tune-up matches, are going to be the Nations League matches, and for all intents and purposes, you have to treat this as the big training camp for the World Cup. What are the issues, and what does Portugal have to figure out between now, those Nations League matches, and then heading into the World Cup? What are the areas that Portugal have to either solidify or improve between now and the World Cup, that the Nations League matches will hopefully answer those questions that they may have?
Yeah. So quite a few things. I'd also recommend. Thanks for the shout out there, Danny, on that interview. I also recommend people heading over to Portugal.net and reading Matt Marshall's article, which he posted yesterday, which was basically looking at all the players, that possible Portugal team that will play in the World Cup, and all the possibilities, possible other players who might come in and out of the team. And I would say, what do they have to do? Okay, first of all, I suppose a general overview. We all know this is an incredibly talented squad of players, quite possibly Portugal's best ever squad of players, in their whole football history. You have to say that Fernando Santos has not really managed to get them playing at the top of their ability collectively for Portugal. So the number one priority, if possible, will be to get a kind of, cohesive system. Everyone uses that word identity, don't they? But basically just I think a solid system, and more or less the solid 11. So we all know where we are, and it's not kind of chopping and changing the whole time. So that would be the number one priority. In terms of individual positions, of course, we saw it in these playoffs. Centre-back is the obvious weakness for Portugal, especially if we're relying on Pep, who thankfully put in an absolutely magnificent performance when he came back for the final. And but he's 38 now, is he? 38 or 39?
39.
39, of course. So,
and not to interrupt you, Tom, but I talked about this with Mark Lewis. What a difference in having someone like Pep alongside Danilo, and with no disrespect to José Fonte, because José Fonte has been asked to do a job and he's done it more times than not. He's done the job for Portugal, but that pairing of José Fonte and Danilo were so shaky, and especially with distribution with Danilo in the first half. But just what an influence that Pep has in the middle of that pitch, especially when they're defending. That whoever's with him, and hopefully we'll have Ruben Dias with him anyway. But just what an influence he can have on someone's confidence, and just the way he quarterbacks the back line that he's done now for over a decade now.
Certainly, the whole team, Danny, is just has been an incredible servant for Portugal. I think I used to say Moutinho. People came back to me and say Pep. I think I'm beginning to shift into that camp, saying the second most important player, for this really kind of golden era in Portugal's football history, probably has to be Pep. You have to say it's Pep now. It's just, he's very, very rarely has a poor game for Portugal. And like you said, big influence on all the others. The only thing is, of course, with Pep, we have to remember he is 39. Even for Porto this season, I think they played about 42 matches all season, and I think he's only played half of them, or he's only started half of them. Because obviously, he's much more prone to pick up injuries at his age, and so
he wakes up a little bit more sore than he did, maybe exactly. 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah,
but exactly. So do we all.
Yeah. So that's one position where we really could do with, finding one or two other alternatives. There are a few, kind of three, which spring to mind. Gonçalo Inácio at Sporting, he's done really well for almost 2 seasons now, being, very solid, big part of Sporting's success during that time. I'd like to see him, given opportunities. Worked into the team. David Carmo, of course, big future expected of him. He was out with a terrible injury, unfortunately, kind of set him back a bit, but he's been back now. The Braga centre-back has been back for about 2 months. He's looked pretty good. So he's another possibility. And of course, Thiago Jallo, who got called up when injuries struck this Portugal squad. So he's presumably in Fernando Santos' thinking as well. So I think that's one important area of the pitch where even if Pep's fully, fit and ready to go, I think we definitely need at least one backup there, because if Portugal go deep into the tournament, I think there's a good chance that he won't be able to play 90 minutes every game. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest priorities for Fernando Santos. Otherwise, we're pretty well set. You look at that team, we've got so many options. It's just, like I say, the question for Portugal and for Fernando Santos is trying to find the right combination, trying to build chemistry. So when they go into the World Cup, they can really maximize this talent that we have. One or two other positions, I actually was really pleased to see Nuno Mendes get the left-back call. Nothing against Rafael Guerreiro. Again, another fantastic servant for Portugal, big part of our success in recent seasons. That said, in my opinion, Nuno Mendes is now the superior option there. And then up front, that's the other big question, of course. Ronaldo, you have to say, he did look off the pace these 2 games. Was it just that he's perhaps not on top of his game at the moment? Or you've got the whole big question of whether Ronaldo should be playing 90 minutes every game. I think we've talked about this before, and you've covered it quite recently, haven't you, Danny, on your show? So
it's been a topic of conversation, I think, Tom, the last week and a half or so. Safe to say.
So there's the question of whether or not Ronaldo will be playing 90 minutes every game, which again maybe it's one of these conversations, a bit like the Fernando Santos being the manager conversations. Maybe it's not really worth spending that much time on it, because it's going to happen, isn't it? It's going to happen unless Ronaldo is injured. It's almost certain, I'd say, that he's going to play every minute of every game, just about. So the question then becomes, who's his best partner? Jota has. I actually really like Jota. He gets a lot of criticism because for actually not passing to Ronaldo when perhaps he should do. But I actually quite like that, because I think there's one problem that Portugal has had over recent tournaments, perhaps not the very recent tournaments, but certainly a few years before, when Ronaldo was just so much better than any other Portugal player, was that Portugal was so focused towards serving Ronaldo. That was kind of the whole point of the team. And other players, instead of kind of playing their natural game, they'd always be looking to pass to Ronaldo, and quite often that was detrimental to the team. Diogo Jota, for example, he doesn't seem to have that problem at all. He goes for goal almost every time. He just plays his natural game. I keep saying it, one of these days he's going to score 5 goals for Portugal in a game, because he gets himself in such good positions. He's a real poacher. We've all seen what he's done at Liverpool. He really is blossomed into a great player. But for Portugal, it hasn't quite come off yet. He tends to be a bit wasteful, but one of these days it's going to click for him, and he's just going to have an amazing game, hopefully.
And who knew he could distribute the ball?
Yeah. Oh, what a cross! What a
cross on his weaker foot too. It was a great ball to Bruno Fernandes, for sure.
And of course, that said, we've also got players like João Felix, who you talk to a lot of people in Portugal, and they tell you he's possibly Portugal's best hope of a future Ballon d'Or winner. Really, really high prospects for him, and thankfully he seems to be over his injury problems and really getting a good run in at Atletico now in Spain, and really thriving. So perhaps that's a bit of a good headache for Santos. Should it be Felix instead of Jota partnering Ronaldo? And that's even before we start talking about Rafael Leão. I don't know about you, Danny, but for me, anytime he's come on, he's only been given kind of 5, 10, 15-minute cameos last few games for Portugal. But anytime he has come on, he's used that time, to really impress. So
he's been electric anytime, and especially in these last 2 matches. The ball that he gave to Mateus Nunes, which is not the part of the game that we are all excited about, but yet it was on display. But it was on display in such a short amount of time that obviously the goal put the game out of reach for Portugal against Turkey there. But for Rafael Leão, it's we have very exciting young attackers. Obviously, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I haven't even mentioned Danny Pedro Neto, who we forget. Before his injury, he was 100%. He was a starter for Portugal. And he was looking really good. I remember the game against, I think it was Luxembourg, wasn't it, in the qualifiers? And he was probably Portugal's best player in that game. So a lot for Fernando Santos to ponder on, a lot of him to work with. These 6 games, I think in some ways, I think it's better than having the pre-tournament friendlies, because friendlies you can't really ever reproduce the tension and the competitiveness of an actual competitive match. I know the Nations League isn't a European Championship, it's not a World Cup, it's not perhaps such high stakes, but it is a competitive game. Usually they are, the players take it very seriously. And so I think that, you could say he's got almost the perfect platform. Fernando Santos.
Do you think, sorry to interrupt, Tom, but do you think because of the scenario that the Nations League matches fall in this year with a World Cup 5 months later, do you think that, I don't ever want to use a competition to not use it for, or to not play it for what it is, because every competition is important. But it's the third of the 3 that Portugal play in. in terms of importance. But because the World Cup is 4 months, 5 months after, or actually no, the last two matches are played in September. I mean, you would think that most teams, I'm going through the groups here. Spain is in, Switzerland is in. I don't believe the Czech Republic are in the World Cup. I don't believe they are.
No, they're not. They got knocked out in the
with
playoffs.
Spain, Portugal, and Switzerland in playing in the World Cup 2 months later, you would have to think logically that those three nations are going to be using the Nations League for the sole purpose of preparing for Qatar in 3 months' time.
Absolutely, yeah. I think without a doubt, it's the.
I don't think anyone's going to be upset that they don't make the semifinals of the Nations League if it means that it prepped them for the World Cup, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. The thing is, though, Dan, I suppose you can do both, can't you? Because obviously,
ideally, yeah.
Yeah, Portugal will be. There's not the group of players you could say that Portugal would take to Qatar. If you had to name the squad today, probably won't be very different to what it is in November. And so the question now is just trying to mold those players into as strong a team as possible. And so, it's not a question of really, bringing in completely experimental players just to give them a bit of a run out, because almost all these players have played for Portugal at one point or another. So I think, in some ways it's the perfect scenario. Fernando Santos can say, yeah, okay, we're going to try and win this Nations League, but our main priority is building, kind of resolving the question marks and building as much of a, of our final team, World Cup team, that we will be playing in Qatar. I suppose the only, we were talking earlier, weren't we? I suppose the only position where you could argue that it would be good just to throw in a few combinations that aren't our strongest would be at centre-back, because I can imagine, okay, Pep's going to be our centre-back, our first choice centre-back at Qatar, but we all know what Pep can do, what he brings. So perhaps it would be better, trying out a few different options there. Maybe Pep not even playing, or certainly not playing all games, just to try and see who the options are, who does well, who looks comfortable, and who looks comfortable playing next to Ruben Diaz. And so when the time came for that to happen, and like I said, if Portugal go deep in Qatar, I really can't see Pep playing every minute of every game. So when the time comes in a World Cup match, someone isn't going in cold. They've already got experience, and they've already got experience of playing alongside Ruben Diaz in a competitive game. So yeah, to kind of a long-winded answer to your very pertinent question is, I think Portugal will use the Nations League tournament to first and foremost build the perfect side as perfect as possible for the World Cup.
Any shot that Cristiano Ronaldo takes June off and maybe even September, and just is put into the lineup on that first game on November 24th against Ghana?
Yeah, good question. Again, very good question. Yeah, I could see it. I certainly could see him. I'd be quite surprised, I'd say, if he and Pep play all the Nations League games. I'd be quite surprised if that happens. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see one or both of them rested. I suppose so. September. So that's that's quite close to the actual tournament, isn't it? And also, Champions League group stage will be going on.
Well, Manchester United doesn't have to worry about that.
That's a good point. Yeah, perhaps they won't be in it. But even if they're not in that, I suppose they will be in the Europa League group stage. But anyway, the whole point of bringing up club football was that that's going to be the start of the club football season. And we all know that the start of the season, it's quite hectic in terms of the competitions. All clubs are in all competitions, all cup competitions. And so, presumably Ronaldo would be playing quite a lot of club football then. So it would probably make sense for him to sit out a few of the Portugal games. Because also, players like Ronaldo and Pep, we know what they can do. Everyone knows exactly what they can do. It's not a question of, I suppose the only thing is trying to get their combinations with the perhaps new players or players who aren't quite so regular starters for Portugal. But yeah, that's a good point, Danny. I'd quite expect some of the absolute solid starters, you could say, Ronaldo, Pep, perhaps even players like João Cancelo, basically any player who that if they're fit, they will be starting in Portugal's first 11. Perhaps one or two of those players, Bernardo Silva, another one, perhaps one or two of those will be rested in some of these games.
Yeah, and probably if you had to guess, you'd probably. Well, I mean, I guess it doesn't. I mean, yeah, to try to guess if they would be in the beginning or if it would be towards the end. Probably towards the end. Those games in September, depending on the approach, could be. Let's give them either as much rest as we can and avoid an injury. 2.5 months away from the tournament, or you play them because you only have 2.5 months before the tournament starts, and you don't have another game. You don't have any friendlies to at your disposal before the World Cup. It's an interesting scenario this year.
I think there'd be a lot more need to do that, Danny. I think there'd be a lot more need to take that approach, the second approach you described there, if there was a lot of completely new players coming into the Portugal team. But there's not really, is there? With almost all these players, all these squad players have played for Portugal at one time or another. And so, there probably won't be an awful lot of experimenting, certainly not experimenting in terms of, let's see what this player can do, in a Portugal shirt. And so, I think because of that, I think the side that we see in the Nations League will probably be quite different, like I say, in terms of one or two or three big absentees in a lot of the matches than the side we see in Qatar.
I think we talked about all the positions besides, I should say, goalkeeper. Do you think Diogo Costa has done enough to be the number one choice for Fernando Santos heading into this summer? Or could you see a scenario as well? And I guess you could always see a scenario, but I still am very interested to see what José Sá in the back would look like, given that he's just been playing so well. And this is not a dig at Diogo Costa at all, but José Sá, he's got the length. He's been playing so well for Wolves in his first season in the Premier League in England. Arguably the best goalkeeper going right now in that league. You have two keepers who are the best right now in their respective leagues in Diogo Costa and José Sá. But I mean, I would at least I should say this: he did well in the two games in the playoffs, but he wasn't asked to do much. So I don't think he's proven and solidified that number one spot yet. I think maybe what has been solidified more than anything is maybe we've seen the last of Rui Patrício overall as the number one, but I don't think we have that next number one solidified yet.
I'm not sure if I agree with you there, Dan. Basically, he did everything he could have done. Like I said, he wasn't tested that much, but he just looked at home. He looked so at home. He looked nerveless, didn't he? You've got to remember, he's very young. Like I said, his very first full season as Porto's number one. He's been really good. He's been almost faultless in, for Porto, making some crunch saves in recent weeks, especially. And I think he's made that place his own. There you go. That's one position you were just talking earlier where I think it would make sense in the Nations League to give José Sá, one or two games as a starter, because in my opinion, Diogo Costa has already made that position his own. But again, Patricio perhaps past his best. Imagine in the World Cup, something happens to Costa. Who are we going to throw in? It'd probably be good if José Sá had one or two caps, under his belt, instead of throwing in him cold. So but I think even when Diogo Costa was Portugal's under 21 goalkeeper, almost everyone knew and said, this is the future of Portugal. Between the sticks is just such a high potential goalkeeper, and his kind of all that potential has come to fruition this season. First of all for FC Porto, and now for the national team. So, in my opinion, I would be very, very shocked if he wasn't Portugal's number one goalkeeper now.
Yep, fair enough. We're finishing up here with Tom Kundert of Portugal.net as we are taking a look back at the draw, taking a look forward at what we could see here in the next few months as Portugal prepares for their 6th consecutive World Cup appearance, and just taking a look at the what ifs in the next few months as we are now officially on the road to Qatar. Fernand Santos, such a divisive figure. And I know he doesn't mean to be, but obviously in terms of punditry and the fans, he's become, we've used this I think in the last few episodes. A hero who stays too long can sometimes become a villain, and he unfortunately has become the ire of a lot of criticism from the fan base. And you and I spoke on the last episode of 2021 where we both felt that his time had come. And his time had come to an end. We had talked about his objectives in that interview with ITV, where the qualifying is meeting the objective, and we both felt that was in terms of expectation, that was the bar is set a little low. With that said, he's not going anywhere. Has he earned the right, you think, to see this out at the World Cup, or I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of relish the situation that Portugal is in right now, where they could have made a decision, maybe, and people would probably find it harsh, but to make the decision to go the route of thanking him for getting us to the World Cup, but then going in the new direction with this group of players to exploit the talents that this team has that Fernand Santos hasn't been able to in his tenure. So a long-winded way to say, should he be the manager in Qatar for this national team?
Yeah, I think he should be. I know people might say I'm changing my tune. But,
it happens, Tom. I mean, there's a lot of people who feel that way, and I mean, I think in getting to the question, I'm like, in my mind as I'm asking it, I'm like, yeah, that would be pretty harsh. But at the same time, it's like, sports is a business more than anything, and it's a results-driven business.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting it on the field to the full potential that this team possibly has, the first thing you look at is the manager. But I digress. Go ahead with your answer there.
Yeah. I think, well, first of all, it's not going to happen, is it? So it's
no. Yeah, we're not hoping for it.
Yeah. No,
or we're not expecting it, I should say.
Yeah, it's a bit of an academic discussion, but yeah, it's a fair question and it's a fair discussion to have. I think, I think he's earned the right to, to take this team to the World Cup. He said, obviously, if Portugal didn't qualify for the World Cup, that would be it. He'd walk. They've got to the World Cup. I think there were some good signs from these playoffs. They weren't fantastic performances, but they were quite good, solid performances. I think Santos did something which really was one of his strong points, I'd say, in his early years as Portugal, because he mixed things up when he realised that he had to. Things weren't working, so he had to change things. Bringing in Otavio, bringing in Diogo Costa, and that really did work very well. Kind of slightly changing also Bernardo Silva's position, playing him more centrally, that worked well. So he's not just a complete one. I know people sometimes say he's old, he's conservative, he's a one-trick pony, he doesn't try new things. I think that's unfair. He does try new things. I would agree with most of the criticism which has been sent his way. He has very rarely managed to get the best out of this incredible group of players, but I think now he's got Portugal to the World Cup. Okay, it was a bit of a bumpy ride, but he's got there. So let's see how he does. And I think, and also another important point we have to bear in mind is, for all the criticism which has come his way, I think it's quite transparent and it's quite obvious that he still does have the support of the players, certainly the senior players. And I think that probably filters down to all the rest of the players. He is a very respected person, just his character, and his personality. And I think as a football coach as well, they realize, I mean, look at it. This is the only guy who's ever brought Portugal a trophy in its whole history, a major trophy in its whole history. And so yeah, he's not going anywhere. And I think let's reassess after the World Cup as for Fernando Santos, and let's hope that when the final is played in Qatar and when that tournament is over, our discussion is going to be how many statues of Fernando Santos are going to be built.
Yeah, how quickly can we canonize him?
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be the dream scenario, and what a wonderful Christmas gift that would be too, Tom.
Oh, amazing, wouldn't it?
Oh my God.
Amazing. No, someone actually, again, going back to one of the comments, I think someone said, and I think it's true, come on, Portugal are due a deep run in the World Cup. Because also, people complain about Santos at 2018 and say, come on, we should have done better there. But, it's a lot of years now where we should have done better, isn't it? 2014 also, very disappointing. 2010, very disappointing. You have to go way back to 2006 for really highly positive participation by Portugal in the World Cup. And even going back a bit earlier, we talked about it earlier, didn't we? 2002, that was also very disappointing. Even going way back to 86, basically, Portugal have only ever had two, successful World Cups. You can say highly successful World Cup, which was the very first, of course, in 1966, and then 2006. And so I think one thing we all tend to forget, especially because it's natural, we focus on our players. We know our players. We know that their potential. We know what this team could possibly do. We tend to forget that there are other teams.
Yeah, right.
And there are other teams with very, very good players. There are other teams packed with world-class players. It's very difficult.
Yeah, we're not the only one with ambition.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So So let's wait and see. Let's see what he can do, and hopefully this will be a tournament that we will be talking about in future Seleção podcasts, later next year and then throughout the years and however long we're on this planet. Danny, looking back, do you remember 2022? What a time that was. So
we're getting philosophical, aren't we, Tom?
Yeah, let's hope that's that's what the future conversation will be.
Well, I'm just happy that we are discussing Portugal in the World Cup, because as we kind of started off the episode, I couldn't bear watching the draw without them, and then waiting about 9 months later, or no, about 8, whatever. Math is not for me, but and then getting to the middle towards the end of November, and the tournament starting, and then it really hitting that the Seleção was not in it. I'm just, how it goes from here. Not that I'm by any means am I just okay with them qualifying, but the alternative just would have been absolutely just disastrous for fans and just supporters of this national team, and for guys like you and I and everyone involved with trying to cover this team. So the fact that they were able to get it done and show the grit to get to the World Cup, obviously the positive there is that we get to talk about them now for the next few months leading up to a tournament that we both and so many people have thought that they should have been in in the first place.
Yeah, like you say, just so looking forward to. I think what you kind of hint at there, Danny, is the real sense of disappointment. I think it just would have been compounded by the fact that we look at these players and we know there's no way these players should not be at that World Cup. You're talking about a lot of the best players in the world, aren't you? Bernardo Silva, Bruno Fernandes, even before we start talking about the big man himself, Pep, and these players, it really would have been a huge disappointment for such a talented group of players to miss out on this World Cup. So yeah, absolutely fantastic that we'll be there, and we'll be having all of these conversations in the next few months, and we'll all be arguing about player A or B should be there, and it's just fantastic to be in that position.
It's better. It beats the alternative, Tom. That's for damn sure. My thanks to you, Tom, for joining us here on episode number 60 of the Seleção podcast. Of course, you can follow Tom on Twitter at Portugal1. Go to Portugal.net for all your Portugal and Liga NOS. Do we still call it Liga NOS? Yeah, I don't think we call it Liga. BWin. Yeah. Yes, that's right. I think Liga NOS is still on the tip of the tongue. Yeah. But
I just call it the Primeira Liga to avoid all of the commercial side of it.
But obviously, all the coverage that you need regarding Portuguese football, head over to Portugal.net and give your support and your followship there to Tom and the wonderful folks at Portugal.net. Tom, all the best to you, sir, and we will talk soon.
Yep, talk soon, Danny.
And that will do it, guys, for episode number 60 of the Seleção podcast. Again, my thanks to Tom Kundert for joining us and taking a look back at the playoffs, reviewing, I should say, the World Cup draw, and then taking a look forward to what the next few months heading to the World Cup in Qatar may look like for our beloved Seleção. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at SeleçãoPod, Instagram at SeleçãoPod, Facebook.com/SeleçãoPod, and you can email the show seleçãopod@gmail.com. You can follow us or subscribe to the podcasts, both audio and video-wise. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any podcasting platforms that you are listening to and using. Just go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you have been watching us on YouTube, we've had a wonderful uptick in views and subscribers on the YouTube page over the last couple of weeks. Greatly appreciate everybody heading over there as well. If you haven't yet, hit the like button on. And again, I don't know where the like button is as I do this, but now I look like a puppeteer, but it's fine. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Share with your friends, with your football family and friends. Get this podcast all over the world as we head to the World Cup in 2022 in Qatar. My name is Danny Pinto. I have been your host of episode number 60 of the Seleção podcast, a proud partner of Portugal.net. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the road to Qatar. So, Força Portugal!